Good morning, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. Welcome to this last day of the Water Pavilion, focused on cooperation, transboundary cooperation and climate security. Cooperation is crucial for climate change adaptation and mitigation. It's important to effectively adapt to climate change, and there are actually many dimensions for cooperation. On the one hand, we need cooperation between sectors, such as water, energy, food, navigation, tourism, and all the other sectors using water, which are almost all. Then we need cooperation between different levels of government, civil society, local authorities, regional authorities, business, academia, international organizations, etc. And finally, we need cooperation between countries, and especially on water, because more than half of the water resources worldwide are shared between 2 or more countries, creating interdependencies and also risks, but also benefits and many opportunities for cooperation. So why do we need cooperation? It makes adaptation more effective and increases resilience. It actually reflects the shared responsibility which we have for our water and for our climate as common goods. It enables motivating and learning from each other, learning from good and bad practices, and thereby avoid mistakes and maladaptation. It also helps to pool resources between different actors, to share data, to work jointly on measures, etc. And we will hear numerous examples of such kind of cooperation throughout the day today. And actually, the very reason we are here at the COP26 is also because of cooperation. Because I think we all commonly believe that we can only tackle global problems such as climate change together. And this was the reason why the UNFCCC was created in 1992 together with other global conventions on desertification, biodiversity, etc. And it was also the basis for the Paris Agreement, and and it's one of the priorities for this COP and for the upcoming next COP, which, as we now know, will be held in Egypt next year, and for the World Water Forum happening also next year in Dakar. And this is also the reason why the cooperation was chosen as topic for the last day of the Water Pavilion, to link it up with the next COPs, with the other global processes, etc. Today's day is actually co-curated by IUCN and UNECE. UNECE is the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, and we are hosting the secretariat of the so-called Water Convention, which is a unique now global legal and intergovernmental framework for transboundary water cooperation. And finally, in the water field, we are also all looking forward towards the 2023 United Nations Water Conference. And we are very glad to have with us today one of the 2 co-hosts of this conference, Netherlands, together with Tajikistan. Later on this afternoon, we will hear in more detail about the conference preparations. But now I'm happy to hand over to Henk Ovink, Special Envoy for Water from the Netherlands, for some opening remarks from his side. Henk.
Thank you, Sonja. And it's great to be here. Shall I do it like this? Yeah. Thanks so much, UNECE and IUCN, for hosting the last day in the Water Pavilion. Thanks for coming and thanks for joining online. Last day in the first ever Water Pavilion at the COP was a little bit risky. Before you know it, this is a place where water people talk to water people. But it turned out differently. An amazing, valuable week this has been for climate and water, adaptation and mitigation, and of course action. The Water Pavilion ensured that there were takeaways from this COP. We managed to bring the world together on water and climate in this place. So I'm not going to name them all, but I want to thank the list of people. And today, of course, UNECE and IUCN as hosts, but every day had different hosts to secure that we had that crowd. It also showed that the water sector stands united, that while it's a diverse group, that we work together and help the world to adapt to climate change and to contribute to mitigation. We connected with that world and hosting sessions on food, agriculture, infrastructure, cities yesterday at the Cities Day, biodiversity, the role of women, and many, many more. Connecting to show the world that water can connect. And that is, what water is about, bringing everybody and everything together, focusing on solutions and coalitions that help drive impact forward. And we saw results. The Water Footprint, the Water Tracker, the Resilient Water Accelerator, the Adaptation Academy, and many, many more solutions were brought to the forefront to be able to scale up our water action across the world in these partnerships beyond water. And the political level. It was not only a group of policymakers, activists, NGOs, businesses from across the world. Also the politicians joined, ministers. Frans Timmermans even was here to acknowledge the importance of water in the context of climate, mitigation and adaptation. So we're here for the first time, but not the last time. We're here to stay, and how are we going to take this further? First, we're going to continue and expand the brilliant cooperation of the Water Pavilion partners and make better use of these platforms, like with UNECE. We work with you across the world and try to expand the convention, but we have to put this into place. Mainstreaming water in adaptation and mitigation is one, but mainstreaming what we already have, the power of those partnerships and collaboration, the framework, is of critical importance too. Securing that what we have can be the basis for expanding sustainable development and climate action. And not only for the next pavilion in Egypt, although we work closely with Egypt, it's going to be really a blue COP, a water-rich COP for Egypt, very important, but also for us. But also the steps in between, the Oceans Conference in Portugal, Kunming, the second half of the Kunming Conference in China on biodiversity. COP27 in Egypt will have a combined effort also with its Water Week. But it's also interesting COP because it is an Africa COP, but it's also a Middle East COP, and it's a Mediterranean COP. So it's well positioned to reach a rippling effect across geographies and scales across the world. After Egypt, we go to New York. The second ever, first since 1977, UN 2023 Water Conference. The conference the Netherlands and Tajikistan are co-host of. We're very proud of that, but also a bit uncertain, you could say. Because 46 years after the first, it sounds like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And that's an opportunity you can miss or not. So the ambition is massive. The pressure also. So we have to secure that in the run-up to that conference, we do everything with everyone to ensure that that is indeed a watershed moment for the world. That means that we have to understand the gap, which is massive, that we have to identify the partners to be able to bridge that, the commitments that are needed to expand on, explore and expand on the narrative we have on water and sustainable development and climate action, and make sure that that is all embedded in our formal and informal dialogues, processes and procedures. The vision statement of the UN 2023 Water Conference is online now. We had an amazing session with Tajikistan and the two ministers on Monday to work with the world. It also showed that that was a session not only with politicians, but we had online and here activists from across the world. And it also showed the commitment of the Netherlands and Tajikistan that that is not, conference is not a government conference alone. It's not a conversation on policy. It is a conversation on water action by all and with all. A watershed moment, I said so. The COP process on action and adaptation towards 27 and then 28 in the United Arab Emirates, where the global goal on adaptation will have to be agreed upon. So that is also where UN 2023 comes in, as the last stepping stone towards, agreeing on that global goal and securing the importance of water across every border, boundary, and sector we have. And especially that is important. We could read in the papers and from our delegations how important adaptation is in this COP, high in the agenda of the draft declaration. But today it's about cooperation, it's about collaboration. This is Cooperation Day, and water, well, if there is an issue where you can and must talk about cooperation, it's about water, because like Ban Ki-moon used to say, water is life, and that is not just a sentence, it is true, because it connects with everything across sectors and scales, but it also connects with everyone. And I think that last part is so important, because from a single mother somewhere in Africa to a businessman in Asia and a mayor in Latin America, it talks to the people. And only because of that, we can make a difference, because people talk to politicians, and politicians have to make decisions. People are driving action, and action leads to impact. It's people, when they come together, that those actions actually are sustainable, equitable, and resilient. And that is why cooperation through water is so important. We showed the world, that the climate community, that water is that connector, and that we're here to stay. And let's continue this. I want to thank Sonia and the team for hosting us here today, and the amazing work. And of course, James from IUCN, you're here too. Thanks so much. And the whole group of partners for being with us. We really look forward to take this further. And then last, this is a water pavilion. That, what's important, it's a physical space. We come together, but it worked. So we will make sure that we bring this pavilion, perhaps not this pavilion, but the idea of this pavilion to every next step. And we can turn it into a 2023 pavilion, and to a COP pavilion, and an oceans pavilion, and a biodiversity pavilion. But we will make sure that we are here. We, the Netherlands, and our partners, and we can expand that to ensure that we are here to stay, and we use this mechanism, this opportunity to continue this massive work. So thank you, partners, thank you, world. Let's do it together.
Thanks very much, Henk, for those words. Very briefly, but just going to run through quick the program of the day. So we talked a little bit, Sonia explained that about cooperation is not just about transboundary engagement, it's also about cooperation between sectors. So this morning we will start with the transboundary side of things between states. We'll be going from Lake Chad, stakeholder countries, the Mekong, the Niger, and the Amazon Basin. We'll be hearing from the European Commission, the Ramsar Convention, Wetlands International, and also from UNICEF and ICIMOD, working on water within the Himalayas with India, Nepal, and Bangladesh. Then we'll have a presentation on youth for water across the Mediterranean region, and then building water stewardship pathways in Latin America, focused on Peru, working with companies. Finally, we'll get to Tajikistan and many agencies they're working with, talking about the lead up to the 9th World Water Forum and the World Water Council. And then we will get to work with the CGIAR and the International Water Management Institute and the French Water Partnership on tackling water security for adaptation through water systems. That's the run of show for the day. Please do stay with us wherever you are, and we'll now start the first session.
Good morning, everybody. Once again, welcome to this Cooperation Day of the Water Pavilion. And particularly now, we are starting the session on water, climate and borders, the role of River Basin Cooperation for climate resilience. As I already said just a few minutes ago, 60% of the world's freshwater is shared by 2 or more countries, and 153 countries worldwide actually share transboundary waters. And more than 40% of the world population lives in such basins. So transboundary cooperation is crucial for sustainable development, peace, but also for effective climate change adaptation and mitigation. And in order to make it work, we need agreements on such shared basins and institutions which can effectively manage them. These are, for example, River Basin Organizations, Lake Basin Organizations, and also some groundwater basin organizations which we have around the world. Such River Basin Organizations are crucial agents for peace in the basins and also play an important role for climate change adaptation. For example, they can coordinate climate change action across borders. They can help countries even with national adaptation efforts. They can help countries to share experiences in the basin, develop transboundary adaptation strategies, etc. So today we want to hear exactly from such organizations, from basin organizations around the world working on adaptation in Africa, Latin America, and in Asia. And unfortunately, most of them are not with us in person, so they will connect online, given that it was not easy for some of them to travel here in the current circumstances. But we would like to give them a voice, to hear from them what they do on climate change, how they support also national adaptation efforts, how this links with NDCs, and what is needed to move forward to make their voice even better heard in climate change discussions and negotiations. So this session is co-organized by DRZ and UNICE, the Secretariat of the Water Convention, which, as I already said, the Water Convention is a now global legal and intergovernmental framework for transboundary cooperation. It's actually for water cooperation the same what UNFCCC is for climate change. And we have speakers from around the world. We have Tanja Gönner, the DRZ, head of DRZ. We have then several videos from basin organizations around the world. And then we will have a panel discussion between some of them. And finally, we will hear from NDC partnership, how this links also with the NDCs and helping countries to support implement their NDCs. If you could show the next slide, which is about interpretation. Oh, sorry, it's me who has to change. So this session, this is the program. And we also have interpretation here today, which has to be, however, done through the Interactu app. So interpretation English, French, and you can find here the link and how to log in for the interpretation, if you need it. And we will also be happy to take some questions at the end of the event. So with this, I now suggest that we start the program so that we have time for discussion at the end. And at the beginning, we will hear a short video message from Ms. Tanja Gönner, who is the chair of the management board of the GIZ, the German development agency, which is working actually a lot on supporting countries in transboundary cooperation and climate change adaptation. So if we can show the first video.
Your Excellencies, dear esteemed guests in the Water Pavilion and those listening online. I would like to begin by offering my congratulations on behalf of GIZ to our partner, the Stockholm World Water Institute, who took the organizational lead in this Water Pavilion. It is the first of its kind at the Climate COP. This sends a clear message about the central role that water plays in the climate crisis. I would also like to thank Sonja Köppel and the UNECE for co-convening this session with us. Climate change knows no borders, and neither does water. The IPCC 6th assessment report was clear in its message. Continued warming will intensify the global water cycle, impacting the variability and the severity of wet and dry events globally. The global understanding of the linkages between climate change, water scarcity and security is increasing. However, we must also emphasize that these crises are all interrelated transboundary challenges. Adaptation in one country can potentially mean maladaptation to a neighboring country. Improvements in upstream management can create mitigation opportunities downstream. Conflicts can spill across borders and affect multiple regions. And we must not turn a blind eye. It is the most vulnerable that are hit the hardest by water-related disasters and crises, especially in fragile or conflict-affected countries and regions. These challenges are already being tackled today by transboundary basin organizations. The origin of many basin organizations date back to the 1960s. Member states of different basins around the world have formalized principles, structures and responsibilities of transboundary coordination. With their convening power and established regional mandates, these organizations are also vital for ambitious action on climate change. They enable initiatives such as early warning systems for disasters or leveraging joint investments for climate mitigation and adaptation measures, like, for example, the conservation of transboundary wetlands. Dear ladies and gentlemen, today in Glasgow we are entering into the final round of climate negotiations. The basis for our climate action and the backbone of the Paris Agreement are the nationally determined contribution and national adaptation plans steered by respective national ministers. However, if we really wish to have an impact on the ground, one key challenge is the coordination of our adaptation and mitigation activities across borders. Basin organizations represent an opportunity to leverage already existing mechanisms to bring transboundary approach to the NDCs and NAP processes and can and should be considered as recipients of climate finance. GIZ strengthens the capacity of our partners in the management of shared waters with a focus on climate change adaptation and mitigation. We believe that basin organizations are well placed to help tackle the climate crisis. GIZ, on behalf of BMZ, the Foreign Office, BMU and the EU, strengthens transboundary water cooperation together with 8 basin organizations and 4 regional cooperation mechanisms worldwide in 53 countries with a current commissioning value of approximately 100 million euro. This includes, amongst others, cooperation in the Mekong, Niger, Nile, Rusizi, Lake Chad and Kivu basin, and many other basin organizations in the SADC region, as well as countries in the Balkans and Central Asia. On top of destabilizing the climate change impacts, many regions are facing increasing levels of insecurity. We are developing analytical tools on the interlinkages between climate change, security, and the water, energy, food security nexus in fragile contexts. Together we want to identify measures that will help to prevent transboundary conflicts related to climate change and natural resources scarcity. Our experience shows that the efficient coordination of critical data and the coordination of joint projects above all required trust. Strong basin organizations provide a platform to develop trust between user groups, civil society members, the private sector and governments. They are well placed as moderators and coordinators across borders, addressing climate risks and contributing to resource security and stability. They are able to tackle transboundary water management to another level, to transboundary resilience management. In conclusion, I call all parties to recognize the potential of basin organizations to address the climate crisis. I'm proud that today we succeeded in bringing many of our partners together. Now I invite you to join this fruitful session where we will learn from your shared knowledge, experience and challenges from different regions around the world. Thank you very much for your kind attention and all the best for you.
Thank you very much for this statement from GRZ side. And now we want to hear from some of those basin organizations around the world. And we'll start with Africa, with the Niger Basin Organization. The Niger is one of the most important basins in Africa, bringing together 9 countries. And the Niger Basin Authority has been at the forefront of addressing climate change by developing a climate resilience plan and also mobilizing financial resources, including from GCF, for example. So I would like to now ask to show the next video.
Mesdames et messieurs, chers participants, au nom de l'autorité des bassins du Niger, c'est un réel plaisir pour moi de m'adresser à vous lors de cette importante session au sujet de l'eau, le climat, les frontières. Avant tout propos, je voudrais remercier le secrétariat de la Convention sur l'eau et la coopération allemande pour l'organisation de la présente session. Je suis là pour porter la voix des populations des bassins du Niger, partagées entre 9 pays face aux défis des changements climatiques. Mesdames et messieurs, l'autorité des bassins du Niger et ses pays membres sont confrontés à une multitude de défis auxquels ils doivent faire face. Il s'agit entre autres des défis climatiques. La région sahélienne, comme vous le savez, est une des plus vulnérables aux effets néfastes du changement climatique. En témoignent les inondations et les sécheresses récurrentes. Dans le bassin du Niger, aussi il y a un défi sécuritaire dans toute la bande sahélienne, des défis démographiques qui exercent une forte pression sur les ressources naturelles. Sans oublier les défis de gouvernance avec une instabilité politique couplée à une méfiance grandissante des populations envers les administrations publiques et étatiques. Ajoutez à cela un défi économique et social avec des populations vivant principalement sur des secteurs primaires hautement dépendants des ressources naturelles, notamment de la disponibilité en eau et de terre. Et un défi aussi sanitaire qui est venu exaspérer tout cela. Pour faire face à cette situation, l'ABN a mené depuis plusieurs années un dialogue de sollicitation et de négociation entre les États membres avec les partenaires techniques et financiers et en incluant les usagers et usagères des ressources naturelles des bassins. Cela a permis au bassin du Niger de se doter d'abord d'une vision partagée pour le bassin du Niger, aussi d'une charte de l'eau des bassins du Niger, véritable instrument juridique et réglementaire permettant d'encadrer la coopération entre les États membres. Et aussi cette charte elle est dotée de 5 annexes. Aussi des institutions de gestion de l'eau, aussi au niveau des chefs d'État, des ministres, des experts techniques, et c'est avec l'implication des représentants des usagers des bassins et d'une planification stratégique et opérationnelle sur le long terme de plus en plus multisectorielle et intégrante, ciblant le renforcement de la résilience au changement climatique des bassins. Mesdames et messieurs, permettez-moi de conclure. Face aux enjeux du changement climatique, l'autorité des bassins du Niger, en tant qu'organisme des bassins transfrontaliers, joue un rôle très important en matière d'adaptation et d'atténuation aux impacts du changement climatique. L'ABN appelle toutes les parties prenantes à s'engager dans le plan global d'amélioration des conditions de vie des populations des bassins. Je vous remercie pour votre aimable attention.
Thank you very much. We will now move to another continent. We will hear from the Mekong River Commission in Asia. Actually, in Asia, transboundary water cooperation is not very much advanced. There are not many agreements or basin organizations existing. But the Mekong Commission is a very important institution bringing together the four Mekong countries, lower Mekong countries, and also cooperating with the upstream countries. And the Mekong River Commission has already worked on climate change since several years. They even had a specific climate change adaptation initiative. And I'm now happy to hand over the floor to Mr. An Pichata, Executive Secretary of the Mekong River Commission.
Excellency, distinguished participants and colleagues, just like climate change and climate disaster, the Mekong has really been out of the news over the last few years. Severe droughts in 2019 and 2020 saw the Mekong water levels fall to their lowest point in the living memory. In its latest estimates, the Mekong River Commission, which represents the four countries of the lower Mekong River Basin, predicts that droughts and floods will only become more frequent and severe. The Mekong River Basin is also facing multiple threats. According to our latest assessment on the state of the basin, we are threatened by riverbank erosion, declining in fish stock, and reduced replenishment of the Mekong Delta as a result of intensive water use and climate change. These threats are compounded by the COVID-19 pandemic that has created economic hardship and environmental degradation. These threats require short, medium, and long-term interventions. But more importantly, the Mekong River Basin supply demands a new solution based on trust, good faith, and enhanced cooperation, not only among the four MRC member countries, but also the other two upper countries, China and Myanmar. It also demands a collective responsibility by all parties to protect the Mekong River's delicate aquatic ecosystem amidst rapid development and intensified climate change. That is why the MRC has recently devised a new 10-year basin development strategy for the whole basin. The strategy represents both an evolution and a break from the past by harmonizing national interests while optimizing regional benefits and promoting shared development responsibility. It called for all stakeholders to commit to a comprehensive blueprint aimed at improving the state of the basin over the next decade, while adhering to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The strategy recognizes the need to build climate resilient under a new reality through socially just economic growth, lowering the dependence of the poorest of the basin's people on climate vulnerable resources. Overcoming these challenges, reaching the defined goal will be a daunting task because the stakes for the region are higher than ever before. We will need a bold political commitment of the highest order and active engagement from all stakeholders. This is because the Mekong River belongs to all and will determine the fate of the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this voice from the Mekong River Commissioner. And I think it's very interesting to show also how transboundary cooperation can evolve over the years and can also address challenges such as hydropower development, which is a huge challenge in the Mekong, and also trying to address the fact that two countries in the basins are not officially at the moment members of the MRC, but they are still now slowly coming on board, as we have heard from the Executive Secretary. And I think this can be a good model also for other parts of the world. Now, I would like to move to the last continent, Latin America, where we will hear from the most important basin, the Amazon. We have the pleasure to hear from Maria Alexandra Moreira Lopez, General Secretary of the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization. And here it's quite interesting because ACTO is actually working not only on water, but also on many other aspects of regional cooperation, including water. So I ask you to show the video now.
The warming of the Amazon is a fact. We are already facing intensified floods and droughts, increasing forest fires, retreating ending glaciers, and sea level rise. To address this kind of challenge and others, ACTO has been supporting the 8 basin countries to mainstream adaptation to climate change across the organization's multi-thematic and multi-sectoral agenda. Adaptation to climate change is a cross-coordination, requires coordination across governmental levels, authorities, stakeholders, and countries. Also requires significant financial resources. Basin organizations are strategically placed to facilitate climate adaptation across boundaries and support member countries in their national efforts through regional cooperation, capacity building, information exchange, providing at the same time new methodologies, technologies with accurate and current data, scientific research, innovation, among others. In this sense, we officially launched before yesterday the Amazon Regional Observatory, a permanent virtual forum promoting the flow of information and data between institutional and intergovernmental authorities of the member countries, and catalyzing institutional and stakeholders partnerships at all levels. It is our vision this observatory will become a data reference, a dynamic portal, and catalyst of regional and global coordination for the Amazon. Moreover, in order to inform decision-making, we are consolidating the Amazonian hydrological and water quality monitoring networks. Another effort is our regional atlas. As ACTO mapped and assessed the hydroclimatic vulnerability at a basin level and facilitate the inclusion of climate change adaptation into regional strategies. We also promote integrated regional multi-sectoral resilient planning using, for example, nexus modeling in climate scenarios, coupled with a strategic planning regarding the provision of drinking water services, basic sanitation, and solid waste management for the Amazon population. Meanwhile, at the local level, specific projects strengthening community resilience and water security through early warning systems, nature-based solutions, alternative water supplies to adapt to melting glaciers, groundwater use and protections, and adaptation to sea level rise. Finally, despite the fact that in most of the countries the water sector is considered as a part of the NDCs, the specific issue of transboundary water resource is not included in a prepared way. And there is a perfect word niche that must be filled by the Basin Organization. In fact, we already to the NDCs, but we do not have effective methodologies or tools to explicitly measure these contributions, and neither do we generate visibility or strategic positioning in this work. In this sense, next year, ACTO has committed to start a common Amazon regional baseline to contribute to the NDCs, taking into account the concrete regional action that we already implemented. Once again, thank you very much and greetings from the Amazon.
Thank you very much, Ms. Moreira. And I think she has very well set the scene for the discussion which we are now having with the panel, because we would like to exactly hear and discuss how those basin organizations which are doing such important work can actually better be integrated and better contribute to the climate discussion, how they can contribute to the NDC implementation, and how they are already contributing to NDC implementation. And we have a panel now with 3 virtual speakers from 2 other basin organizations from Africa, namely first the Lake Chad Basin Commission, and then a very young basin organization, which is the Abakir in Central Africa region. And then also we will hear from Europe, from Estonia, which is sharing transboundary waters with neighboring countries such as the Russian Federation. We will hear from Harry Leaf, chair of the Water Convention and co-chair of the Russian-Estonian Commission on Transboundary Waters. And we want to discuss, on the one hand, what challenges and especially what solutions the RBOs are already bringing, what are the lessons learned, what they suggest to further improve the work on climate change, and how they can or should better link with the NDCs and implementation and also national adaptation plans in the different countries. So to start, I would like to give the floor to Hyacinth Banseka, who is the technical director of the Lake Chad Basin Commission, a very important organization for the Lake Chad Basin. And interestingly, the Lake Chad Basin Commission is not only dealing with water issues, but actually also with peace and security issues in the region, and also addressing climate change from a broader perspective. And I would like to now ask Mr. Banseka, what are the challenges, and most importantly, how does the Lake Chad Basin Commission address the climate change challenges in the region? Could you please provide some specific examples of what the Lake Chad Basin Commission does in order to increase the resilience and prevent conflicts related to climate change in the Lake Chad Basin?
Okay. Thank you, Sonia, for the question. And I will first want to start by thanking the organizers of this session on behalf of the Executive Secretary and our team here. I thank the GIZ who facilitated us in integrating in this session. Thank Siwi who led this Water Pavilion, and also thank the UNEC Water Convention Secretariat and all the partners. As you rightly say, we are facing many challenges with respect to climate change, principally related to issues related to flooding and as well as droughts. And so I wouldn't delve too much into that, but really go into looking at how do we go about addressing some of these. Principally, some of the impacts of these erratic seasons, where you have the start of the rainy season is not at when it is expected, the start of the dry season comes when it is not expected. So it really sort of turns over the farming calendar. So what we are doing at our level with all our partners, especially the African Development Bank, the German Cooperation through GIZ, we're trying to work with the populations to promote the use of short duration seeds for agriculture. So for that, we provide both technical support and then we provide some of the varieties which the farmers can use to make sure that they can get a harvest even when the season is not as expected. We also supporting our populations to do the diversification. When you have to diversify your different cropping patterns so that you don't stay only on one crop. You can do off-season cropping to make sure that you can be able to catch up on the season on the peak period that you have lost. Thirdly, we we work to really promote what we call the small-scale irrigation practices. This we do a lot with some of our projects in the communities in all the 5 member states. So we try to support the farmers to come together and establish small-scale irrigation practices to make sure that they get a harvest. We also, to make sure that we increase and stop the erosion, we support agroforestry in our communities. Agroforestry, which also leads to ecosystem restoration, because we are losing our ecosystems due to the advancing of the droughts. And finally, one of the practices I would like to raise is what we do with dune fixation to fight desertification. So these are some of the things we try to carry out to make sure that we help our populations to adapt to this continuously changing climate. But to be able to do all of this, it is important to note that we also had to stop and really, we are obliged to do adaptation, but at some point we need to plan it. So we work with our partners, especially the GIZ, to establish a regional climate change adaptation strategy for all the member countries. So this is really the framework document that is guiding all our work in the area of climate change. And this is leading us to facilitating exchange between farmers to make sure that they can learn from each other and be able to survive with this changing climate context. So I will stop there and hand you over the floor, Sonia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's quite interesting to hear how a regional organization like the River Basin Commission is not only working on water per se, but also on exactly livelihoods, agriculture, food, the water-climate interface, recognizing that in order to address climate change, we need integrated solutions, bringing together different sectors, different approaches, etc. And it's interesting that you mentioned also the development of adaptation strategy. And I would like to ask, are you linking this adaptation strategy also to the NDCs, nationally determined contributions by the member countries?
Yeah, no. What we do generally definitely is that we work with all our member countries to make sure that we don't. The strategy is not for the Commission. The strategy is for the Commission and its member states. So we definitely use the strategic documents developed at the country level. For those countries that have national adaptation plans, we work with their national adaptation plans. For those who have defined clear adaptation actions in their national determined contributions, we use them. And also for those, we also capitalize on what was in the National Adaptation Program of Action documents, the NAPAs. So we actually using all the documents to be able to feed into this regional document that we produce. So yes, Sonia, we're trying to mainstream and work with both all these strategic documents at the national levels.
Great, thank you very much. Now we move to a different part of the world, namely Europe. Transboundary. He's not there? Okay, apparently we don't have the speaker online, so we move to another part of Africa, Central African region. Abakir is a very young institution for transboundary cooperation, established just a few years ago, and we have, in this case, a representative from Rwanda with us, Ms. Christine Nyodwambaza, Deputy Director General of the Rwanda Water Resources Board and Technical Advisory Committee Chair for the Abakir. And I would like to ask you to tell us a bit about Abakir and particularly also what could be the role of River Basin Organizations and particularly obviously the Abakir in the formulation and implementation of nationally determined contributions and national adaptation plans.
Okay, thank you so much, Sonia, and I thank you all the entire organizing team for this event. I thank you for giving me this opportunity to present on behalf of Abakir. I start by giving you the status of the river basin in the region. As I'm Rwandan by nationality, Rwanda is part of a different river basin organizations, such as the Nile Basin Initiative, the Lake Victoria Basin Commission, and the Authority for Lake Kivu and the Rusizi River, which is the youngest among the three, as you said. Working together on water is absolutely necessary to achieve good functioning river basin management by enhancing cooperation with neighboring countries. Coming back to the question, you want to know about what could be the role of River Basin Organization in the formulation and implementation of NDCs and the NAPs. So River Basin Organizations play a critical role in bringing together the countries to harmonize their actions. We have a good experience of River Basin Organizations, having supported the countries to conduct baseline study, as we have it now in Abakir. We have a baseline study which has been conducted through the support of European Union and the GIZ. And this has been helpful to know the challenges, the risk, what is in the basin, especially in the Lake Kivu and the Rusizi River basin. So I can use this experience to tell you that the very law of River Basin Organization is to build the capacity with member states.
Hello? Christina, we cannot hear you anymore very well. Could you try to turn off the video to see if we can then hear you better? No. Okay, it seems that we have a connection problem. Christina, can you hear us? No, that doesn't work. Okay, I'm afraid we will move to the last speaker and then hopefully come back to Christine earlier on. So Harry Leaf is the chair of the commission between Estonia and Russia. They share a very important basin with the Lake Pepsi, one of the biggest lakes in Europe, and they have been cooperating for decades already, preventing conflicts and also especially improving the development on the basin, for example, with regards to fisheries and and many other aspects. And Harry is also now currently the chair of the Water Convention,
Hello?
which I'm the secretary of.
Sonia,
Ah,
can
Are
you
you
hear
back?
me?
okay, now we can hear you again. Can you hear us?
May I continue?
Okay, then please continue. I hope it will work now, and then afterwards we move to Harry.
Okay, I was just giving you the laws of River Basin Organization in the formulation and implementation of NDCs and the national adaptation plans. So, as I was saying, the River Basin Organization can help in the coordination for policy development, long-term planning, support effective implementation for basin development.
Christina, I'm
Also,
sorry.
they can facilitate the
I'm sorry, Christina, we cannot hear you well. Could you try to reconnect your internet and we will come back to you later? And meanwhile, we will go to Harry to hear from him. So back to Harry. Apologies for this. Obviously, unfortunately, connection from Africa is not always so easy. So I give the floor again now to Harry Leaf, chair of the Russian-Estonian Commission on Transboundary Waters and chair also of the Water Convention, to say about how they are addressing the issue of floods, drought and climate change, and also what role the Water Convention plays in this regard.
Good morning. Good morning. Can I speak now?
Yes, please.
If yes, I understood so. Thank you. First of all, yes, talking about our region, what is rather northern part, I must say that here also we have some big water bodies, and some of those are transboundary. We here share the Lake Pepsi, what is actually the biggest transboundary lake in Europe. And according to our scientists, actually the fish productivity of Lake Pepsi has historically been remarkably high. Annual yields about 65 kilogram per hectare. And Lake Pepsi is inhabited by 37 fish species. No species have disappeared over the past century, and no invasion of new species either. That means that's very good fish resource. At the same time, looking some changes with climate, we see that the main shift of the Pepsi fish community from cool water species towards more warm water species like pike perch and berm took place during last decades. So we see some changes, and that gave us certainly the indication that we need to more precisely to look what factors are affecting that big water body. From one side, that is eutrophication. From other side, different activities, human activities. Therefore, looking on those challenges, we really need to distinguish between the natural background load, anthropogenic pressure, and the climate change impact to better target mitigation measures. We have water plans. We need to implement the water management plans considering the effect of the climate change, and allocating fishery quotas or limited fish resources and declining a stock of cool water fish species between the border countries in the Lake Pepsi. Those issues are important. However, nowadays we see also flood as a problem. The existence of the flood risk area on that basin includes Lake Pepsi, but also River Basin, and will be important in the future to take into account. but we work well with our neighbors, with the Russian Federation. For that purposes, as on frame of River Basin Organization, we have a joint commission between Republic of Estonia and the Russian Federation, where we put the focus to organize the monitoring, data exchange, and also further on we look how to implement water management plans, especially focusing on those issues related with climate factors. And here again, we enlarge our activity so that we now started more precisely to look on flood issues, and we have that in our permanent agenda. So new trends in our activity, taking into account climate aspect, is obviously important, and we need to work closely with our two working groups in frame of this commission to follow our activities and to achieve the good water status for this big lake. With that, to guarantee also fish resources in future, and also to deliver different sources, different services through that lake, like tourism and coastal management as such. Thank you for my comments towards our cooperation on Lake Pepsi. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this shows how climate change is also affecting fisheries and water quality and other issues in transboundary basins, such as in the case of the Lake Pepsi. And I would like to try one last time, if we can now come here back from Abakir. Christina, are you online? No. Okay, that's a pity. Then I would like to now actually open the floor for some questions. Are there any questions from the audience here which you would like to ask to the panelists? Please don't be shy. I know it's still early in the morning, but okay. We have
Thank you. Rob Bradley with the NDC Partnership Support Unit. I had a question, I think really for either Hyacinth or Harry. We've heard a lot about the value of bringing in a regional approach. I'm not aware of many NDCs to date that have actually included regional elements, and I just wondered whether any of our speakers could reflect on whether there are such examples that I'm not aware of, or whether there's been discussion about that and why those elements haven't made it into NDCs so far.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this question from Robert Bradley. Hyacinth or Harry Leaf, would you like to provide an answer? We now have also Christina back. Okay, Harry or Christina, if you have heard the question, then and if it works now, we can give you the floor. We don't hear you. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, Sonia. I was just putting my contribution to the question through the chat. So you have all the responses in the chat. Then one point was left in. I want just to inform the audience that Rwanda became the first least developed country and the first African country to submit its enhanced NDC. So River Basin Organization in the region should support countries to learn from Rwanda for sharing experience in developing NDCs and the NAPs. So that was my last point for the answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina. And since we now can hear you, I would like to ask if you can a bit more answer to the question just posed by Robert. So if I understand well, the NDC of Rwanda does include transboundary aspects. And could you expand a bit more on why maybe others are not yet including transboundary aspects, and what could be done so that more countries include regional and transboundary elements in future NDCs, and especially in their implementation?
Okay, I think the consultation meetings between countries also they can have practical exercises in developing the policies and also sharing experience, because as I said, Rwanda was the first country in the region to submit the NDCs so that the others can learn from Rwanda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to ask if Harry or Hyacinth would like to maybe also give a reply to Robert's question on why NDCs so far do not yet include much transboundary aspects, if you know of any good examples of which do it, and what could be further done to promote this issue.
Thank you, Sonia. Yes, I shortly reflect that cross-border issues were addressed in National Adaptation Plan of Estonia through sectoral impact assessment and setting of objectives and measures. And for example, one goal is to ensure the sustainability of the fisher sources and the well-being of people. That's the same lake, Pepsi one, but I said. In addition, cross-border issues are addressed in the water management plans and coordinated with transboundary countries, in our case, with Russia. So national adaptation plans is taking account in the water management plans. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hyacinth?
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. I think the person who has the question is right. I mean, it might not be clearly stated that it's transboundary issues in the national determined contributions. But from the experience we have, most of the countries who have developed climate change adaptation strategies or national climate change adaptation plans, they actually present how their water resources are, and this considers the fact that they are part of transboundary basins. But to say they expressly address transboundary issues, that is where I think the weakness can be. But indirectly, transboundary issues are sort of raised in the documents, especially in the national adaptation planning documents from the countries. So, but as I think there is some work that needs to be done, maybe to really push for the transboundary aspects to come out more clearly in the national determined contributions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would like to say that we have actually done last year an analysis of NDCs, looking at which one of them include transboundary issues. And around 10 of them have mentioned at that moment. That was not yet all of them were in. We need to now, I think, update this analysis. In the analysis done by UNFCCC, they say that they mentioned the word transboundary, so at least they say that a few of them are including it. I know a few countries which have done it, such as Republic of Moldova for sure. Then some African countries, I think Vietnam, I think Egypt also, but I don't now have the complete list in front of me. So, and I believe there's really scope for further work, on the one hand, to make sure that in the next round of NDCs, these issues are considered, and secondly, also in NDC implementation, also to make then the NDC implementation more effective when it comes to measures, especially those located in border regions, those located on river basin which are transboundary, etc. And here, as it was said by some of the speakers, I believe basin organizations really play an important role. And Under the Water Convention, we have even included this into our work program, that we would like to work with countries on regional NDC initiatives in the coming 3 years. And on this, I would like to just briefly hand over for 1 minute to Harry to say 2 words about the Water Convention. And then I'm actually afraid we already need to close this event soon, unless there's maybe one more question. So if you have 1 more minute to think, but I hand over to Harry for maybe saying 2 words about the Water Convention and what it does on climate change.
Thank you. Yes, for sure. I once again would like to stress that the Water Convention is right now open for all. That's as global. In that sense, I see that many countries are interested to join with that convention. Ongoing work is going on. So, but we cover rather broad scenario for different activities under the program, and climate change issues are among of those. Of course, there are connections with water allocation issues, but also connections with the financing, because both things like water allocation and financing are very important to work with the transboundary waters and taking at the same time into account climate issues. We already in past elaborated several guiding documents concerning climate aspects. Therefore, that will be helpful for countries to look on those and to define good advices for future. But here, as the time is short, I once again invite you to work along with the Water Convention with this program to be partners for our events. And I hope that we will get mutual benefits from that work in our local countries, but also regionally. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Indeed, the Water Convention has worked for more than 10 years on climate change, first by creating a task force on water and climate, then by developing guidance documents such as this collection of good practices, by organizing global workshops and also regional workshop capacity building events, and having pilot projects in specific basins where we support countries to develop transboundary adaptation strategy, for example in the Dniester, in the Tutalas in Central Asia, and in other parts of the world. I would also like to reflect that there was some discussion online in the chat about, for example, financing gaps. Some colleagues have also highlighted that basin organizations also play an important role in funds mobilization. And it's true that there are now a few basin organizations which have actually mobilized climate change adaptation funding. For example, the Lake Victoria Basin Commission, they have a transboundary project from the Adaptation Fund, the Water Basin Authority as well. In the Drin Basin in Southern Europe, the same case, because the Adaptation Fund accepts transboundary projects. And also, as said earlier on, in the Niger Basin Authority, together with AFDB, has mobilized funding from the GCF. So unless there are any last questions, there is one. Okay, just quickly, because then we need to close this event in a few minutes. Yeah. It's on?
Oh yeah, it is. Thank you. Okay, my question has to do with data and knowledge, and usually this is a difficulty how to generate data and knowledge, whether it's climate science data or basic socio-economic data. So I wonder, if we can take stock of our speakers being here, and what sort of mechanisms that they have in place to generate data that would inform these climate adaptation interventions, especially local data. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask if Hyacinth maybe wants to say something on this question, and also reflect on the earlier issuing of financing and how you help countries to finance climate change adaptation.
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. I think thank you to the panel, to the participant who posed that question. I think this is a very critical issue of data. and data management, not only the data itself, but how to manage it. And it's at the core of our business as a regional organization. In the Lake Chad Basin Commission, it has been a big challenge over the years. We have been struggling with building first a system to be able to manage the data. And then actually, now that we have built a system, which we call the Lake Chad Information System, this system is operational, and we are working with the German corporation a lot to try to strengthen the system. And now we are working with the countries to see how to get the data, how to sort of inform this system. So this system needs to be fed with raw data, and then transforming this data to information for the countries. So this we are doing, it's progressive. We are getting support from the World Bank too at the moment to be able to work on the Lake Chad information system to strengthen it. And we're trying on this aspect, they are now coming in to support us with socioeconomic data. Initially, we were working principally on hydrological, meteorological data, so water resources data. Now we are adding the component of socioeconomic data to it. So this is work in progress. This is quite challenging for a regional organization because you have to also agree with the countries what type of data the countries can share with you. So it is one of the biggest challenges we have, and we are working on that with the countries and with our populations, even within the context of our climate change adaptation measures. We are looking at the livelihoods of families. So I think we are working currently with about 2,000 families in the Logon sub-basin of the Lake Chad, of the bigger Lake Chad basin, to see how to really generate data on their socioeconomic livelihoods. So yeah, what was the second part of the question, Sonia, was about financing, right?
Yes, but I'm afraid we don't have much time. If you want to say 1 minute, then we need to really come to the closing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think principally in terms of financing, it's working with the countries to build projects. This is what we try to do, to be able to build projects and be able to have management teams of the project in the different countries and support the countries in implementing these projects with their project teams. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hyacinth. I see that Christine has raised the hand, but 1 minute to Christine, and then we need to really come to the closing.
Yeah, thank you, Sonia, to give me again this opportunity. I want just to share experience on financing. In Yabakir, for example, there is a strategic plan which is under development, supported by GIZ, and also this strategic plan will be used for climate finance. And also there is another project under FDB, which is in initial stage. And this will be on a transboundary project for water quality management in the basin. I cannot miss this opportunity to ask UNES and the GIZ and the other partners to look for opportunities in this basin, the Lake Kivu and the Rusizi River Basin, because there are more opportunities for investment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine, and thank you to all three speakers for their interesting interventions. We now come to the closing of this event, and I would like to hand over to Robert from NDC Partnership to exactly tell us about the link between transboundary and NDCs, how you see the linkages with the work of an NDC Partnership, and how you think transboundary cooperation and the basin organizations can maybe play a bigger role in the future still in NDC implementation.
Thank you.
Does it work?
Thanks. Hi everyone, I'm Rob Bradley. I'm the Knowledge and Learning Director for the NDC Partnership Support Unit. I'm very conscious that I have 0 minutes, and I wouldn't dream of trying to summarize this issue or the rich discussion that we've had from the panelists. The partnership, for those of you who don't know, is a coalition of now probably around 120 countries and 80 international organizations, both governmental and non-governmental, and we support countries with the implementation of their NDCs and the raising of ambition over time. So we are currently supporting 75 developing countries with their NDC implementation. We've just finished supporting 67 countries in revising their NDCs and raising ambition, and that we do through our members. I'm delighted to say that Rwanda is one of our most active countries. In total, we have something like 4,300 different requested activities from countries. Around 10% of those are strongly related to water. We do have quite a few activities in which countries are taking action on river basin management. So Benin, Burkina Faso, Zimbabwe, Dominican Republic, Cambodia are certainly amongst those. As I noted a moment ago, not a lot of those are expressed directly as transboundary issues, but I think as Hyacinth made the point very well, countries may well be internalizing those transboundary issues as they present national action. But there's still a lot more that can be done that way, perhaps not necessarily in representing those transboundary elements directly in NDCs, but nevertheless in the way that implementation then happens. We do need to take those transboundary issues into account. A lot of the activities that were requested around are about mobilizing investment and producing investment plans and roadmaps. There's a lot of disaster risk reduction, but also countries are taking the opportunity not just to reduce risk, but to enhance the value of their river basins in other ways. So in Benin, for instance, a heavily flooded area near Cotonou is being transformed into what the government describes as a green lung, providing a wide variety of ecosystem services. So there are enormous opportunities there. I will highlight that, although we've got all of these requests, not all of them are yet met. So for those in a position to support countries with different activities, we still have an excellent list of priorities that people can step in and support. But there are enormous opportunities there for us all to work on. And as we go into this new horizon with a new round of NDCs, no doubt that will continue expanding. We'll continue to get deeper understanding of what countries really need. And I think if we've learned one thing here, it's the urgency of providing that support so that countries can take action. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Robert. And it's good to hear that you have also so many water-related requests and that some of them are still unmet. So I think this is an opportunity for the water family, the water community, not only UNEC, but also DRZ and other organizations, many of which are co-organizer of this pavilion, also maybe to step in and to support countries in some of the requests you have mentioned, because water is so crucial for NDC implementation and for climate adaptation and mitigation. And let's hope that we can also highlight the transboundary aspects and the role of basin organizations more in the future. So with this, I would like to thank everybody who has contributed, especially DRZ as co-organizer, the translators, the different River Basin organizations, the speakers, Harry, Christine, and Hyacinth, and also the technical support team, which has been great despite the technical difficulties. And certainly there is much more to discuss, but there will be other opportunities throughout this cooperation day to day, and then in the framework of the Water Convention, future events, as well as other organizations working on the topic, such as also INBO, such as DRZ, and many others. And hopefully, I'm sure that the topic will be high on the agenda next year in Egypt at the COP27. So with this, I don't have time to summarize, but I would like to once again thank everybody and to wish you all a nice day and all the best. Thank you.